Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Pastor Darrell from the Quest in Galesburg. It's a gloomy day in Galesburg, like it is most of the wintertime, but you know what? It's good to be alive. It's good to have God's blessing on your life. I was talking with one of my friends on the phone just a few minutes ago. I've been a friend for a long, long time, fellow pastor, and I want to be careful because I would never do anything to identify who this person is, but like many pastors, I'll be honest, speaking as a pastor, Monday mornings sometimes are the most discouraging, depressing times for pastors. You know, we've all said many times that we've all written letters or threatened to write letters of resignation on a Monday morning because it gets so discouraging. Well, my friend was having one of those days, discouraged because attendance was down. Well, hey, with this COVID thing, everybody's down. But he was talking about how he's been down for quite some time. And, you know, finally I told him, I said, you know, brother, I almost said his name. I said, you know, brother, you need to quit comparing yourself to other people. And it's a dangerous thing. And it's for pastors, but it's true for every one of us, whether you're a pastor, a lay person, who you are. We should not always be comparing ourselves to others because, you know, things are not on an even scale. Let me share with you a couple verses of scripture I looked up after talking with him. In Galatians chapter 1, verse number 10, Paul says, For I am now seeking the approval of man or of God. Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. What he's saying is you can't please God if your efforts and energy are spent on trying to please man. It just can't be done. Another one, Paul also wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. He said, not that we dare classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending themselves, but when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding. What Paul says is, you know, it's easy to compare what I've got to what you've got and build myself up. And I'll be honest, as a pastor, many times over the years, I would get discouraged because I would look at this. In our denomination, we had a state paper that came out every month, and it had the statistics, and you compare what you've got to somebody else, and you know, you felt almost useless sometimes. You know, when you went to a camp meeting or a convention somewhere, first thing people ask, hey, but how's the church doing? And what they were wanting to know is, how's your attendance, how's your tithes? That's how we measured success. Well, I want to tell you, that's not a good way to measure. Let me just throw this out there that many, many years ago, when I first started out in the ministry, I was pastoring a church that, you know, looking back at it, we were quite successful, but I didn't feel like it at that time. You know, we'd been there a relatively short period of time. We saw some growth, but still, even at our best, and we did run over 100 for a few times, but on average, we ran 65 to 75, somewhere in that area. And, you know, I thought, man, I'm never going to get to where some of these guys are that are running 200, 300, 400 people. Well, here's the reality, and I couldn't see it at that time. I lived in a town of 1,100 people. I'm living in a town of 1,100 people, and I'm having 75 on average, but hitting over 100 sometimes. I was drawing near 10% of our community into our little building. That's quite a success, but, you know, when you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you don't see that. You only see your shortcomings. I'm mindful of when Jesus told the parable of the talents. One of my favorite aspects of that is this, without going through the whole thing for time's sake. Jesus never once compared what one did to the other, only that one did not do anything. God has not called you to do what I do, or what Benny Hinn does, or some other big name preacher. God has not called you to do in your secular job, whatever. You should not be compared to somebody else. He's called you to do something with what he's given you. Don't compare yourself. What Paul was saying in 2 Corinthians 10 is those that are comparing, measuring themselves against each other, don't understand God's purpose. They lack understanding because, you know, you're called to do what you're called to do, and I'm called to do what I'm called to do, and the two are not always on the same plane. One of my favorite stories is about I don't even know if Brother Morris is still alive, but Carol Morris was one of my favorite pastors. Pastored in a little town. Most people never even knew anything about this guy, but he was one of the most brilliant, had well-educated man, had all kinds of degrees behind his name. You'd never know it because he didn't flaunt it. But when he was pastoring that church, he had a group that was so faithful. If he was to say to them, hey guys, we're going to drive up to Danville where Pastor Daryl's pastoring, the entire church would jump in their cars and go there. They would follow that man anywhere. What had he done? He had made disciples. Disciples are those that are followers of Christ and followers of the shepherd that God has placed over them. When you pastor a church of 10,000 and you have 100 people show up to do something, that's small peanuts compared to what Carol Morris had. My point is not to shame anybody or to build anybody else. My point is simply this. We can't compare ourselves to other people because God has given each one of us our task to do, our mission. You focus on your mission, I'll focus on my mission, and when we all focus on our mission together, God's will and plan is accomplished on this earth. I really hope that helps somebody today. I hope you'll come back and see me again tomorrow at the Quest. God bless you, and you have a wonderful day.